make your talent before an ocean. I'm Simon Frampton. I sort of chair the BIM4Water Skills Group, so welcome. We have got a number of speakers here today, so I hope you sort of enjoy what you hear today. With regards to things like sort of questions, we do have panel sessions for a number of speakers, which you can see in the agenda that was sent online. So we're more than happy for you to put those through the chat function, and then we will actually ask those during the time that we've actually scheduled. If there is a little bit of time at the end of each speaker, then we will allow a bit of a discussion, but if we can keep sort of like questions to that, that'd be fantastic. To start things off, I'm going to introduce you to the BIM4Water chair, which is Jamie, who's going to talk a bit about obviously what's been happening in BIM4Water. All right. Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, Simon. Can everyone hear me okay?
All good?
Good.
Yes.
My camera dropped out at the last minute, so I've joined by phone just to prove that I'm still here and real. What I wanted to do here is just set a bit of a scene, a bit of background to where BIM4Water's come from, and just follow that up and lead into why there was a need for a skills group and how we got to form one. If we look at where BIM4Water started, it was really back in 2013, and that was following the government's mandate for BIM as part of driving digital transformation in the construction sector. And from there, BIM4Water now falls under the UK BIM Alliance's BIM task groups, and we work very closely with Centre for Digital Built Britain. One of the most important things about the group that we'll realise is it's completely free. So participation of stakeholders from across the sector, we're really giving our time to help drive these initiatives. And if we look at the group's mission, that's really to lead, drive and support organisations to realise value through digital transformation. So how can we drive that forward? And moving away from technology, and the people slice of that has got to be equally as important. Where do we fit into that? What's the role of the group as is today? And I suppose that's really about facilitating collaboration. It's about working together, bringing stakeholders together, and really driving that mission. And being able to do that through meetings and events like this is really where the group excels and tries to do things differently. If we looked at some facts of the group, again, it's completely voluntary. There are now 8 task groups working on specific items. We'll have a look at them in more detail on the next slide. We're up to about nearly 1,000 followers across the sector, and we measure that through LinkedIn. And I've dropped the links on these slides here, and I challenge anyone who is not currently following us on LinkedIn or Twitter to do that, and that will keep you up to date with our most recent activities. Memberships reflective of the sector. You can see there's 20 water companies actively involved in the initiatives that we're driving, and also we're attracting the attention of regulators in the central government. So I did promise we'd look at some of the task groups. Of course, we're going to look in detail at the skills group, but you can see there that right from the onset of having good quality data in place to make this happen, we have a data quality, security and governance group. Perhaps if we looked at the way that we'd structure that and look at classification, we could speak about the water industry classification hierarchy standards group, and then how we went on to exchange that. We could look at the standard libraries group, so looking at standard data templates for the exchange of information through the delivery process, and honing in on that delivery process through design and construction and build. We have the greater than 4D task group that looks at digital delivery. What are the best practices and how would we go about doing that? We have an owner operators group, which really looks at information requirements and how we pull that, what's the value, sharing intimate information about common data environments and information requirements, etc. We try and capture all of this within the case studies group, and more recently we have a water data task force who are soon to release the recommendations about open data sharing and a framework to how we could make that happen. And of course all of this wouldn't happen without a skills group, and you can see centrally there that myself and Claire Kovacs as vice chair We're sitting with a steering group and advising that direction. And of course, that's all supported by communications and engagement group. And again, this is all voluntary. And if there's any interest by anyone on the calls to get involved in these activities, please do so. We'll leave some contact details at the end of this. But more importantly, when we spoke about that direction, is about our roadmap. So this is our recently released 2021 to 2026 roadmap, and you can see they're listed out individual task groups working towards a common goal, but each of these is driving through work streams of specific interest. And we did this work in collaboration with Centre for Digital Built Britain to ensure that we're aligning to the more national agenda around interconnected digital twins and how we can use data for more public good. So finishing off, and this is where I'm going to stop and hand over to Simon, I think it's really valuable to look at what we've got in terms of the task groups, and then, what's the convergence between the machine part of this and the human part, and how do we merge these together to find, that change and that digital transformation. And I think a key message that we'll probably hear today is about how we can include, so driving the inclusion of individuals to bring more skills to the table and have that resources to drive digital transformation forward. So I'm really looking forward to this event. I think there's a great lineup of speakers, and I hope you are too. And again, just echoing what Simon said, there is that Q&A session at the end, and it'd be great to hear what your thoughts are on all of this. So I'll stop there and hand over to you, Simon. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you, Jamie. That's really appreciated. Okay, so I'm going to just do a little bit of an update on where we are with skills, because I think over the last, obviously we've had the world of lockdown, but I think during that time we've actually made some good progress. Unfortunately, me not being great with technology, I'm having great fun showing my slides. So Claire's going to kindly do that for me. So yeah, if we can move on to the next one, Claire. So what I'm going to discuss today is just sort of 6 key areas, very simple in what we've been doing, but it's mainly about how we support BIM4Water, who is involved in BIM4Water, what our mission is, equality, diversity and inclusion, a bit about our contribution to the roadmap, which Jamie's already shown, and also a bit on academia and industry. So how do we support BIM4Water? Well, basically, the reason we're here is to support the aims of BIM4Water. It's basically assisting in the delivery of what the BIM4Water mission is. We've seen previous slides from Jamie on what that is all about, but basically we put together a team which provides basically the knowledge, experience and insight into the needs of the sector and undertaking work to meet its mission and objectives. Now, what we mean by that is that BIM4Water is on a sort of a trajectory and has been for some years. But the most important thing within that message is actually people, and without people we're not going to be able to get to where we want to over the next sort of 4 to 5 years. Okay, if we can move on, Claire. So who's involved in the group? So basically we've got a group that we've got people from academia, we've got people from the clients themselves, the water utility companies, consultancies, contractors and niche specialist companies. And the reason it's so sort of broad is the fact that we feel that in order to get the best out of what we're trying to do is get all different types of minds together. So it's great to have a sort of an idea from academia, whether that's sort of technical colleges, whether that's universities, and really sort of understand, what they're trying to do within the modules they're teaching, whether there's anything slightly different that can help people carve a career into sort of the world of digital engineering. So to give you an example, we've been talking to Exeter University, and they do like Dragon's Den style events where people can pitch ideas around concepts, whether it's data or designs or modeling or whatever it may be, under the banner of BIM, and whoever's the most successful will win a bursary to go and actually do a real life project. So it's quite interesting to see how they're trying to sort of harness sort of people's thoughts and minds in that. but without having the likes of water utility companies, consultancies, contractors, niche specialist companies or manufacturers, then we need all of that to sort of have a joined up approach, because as we understand, everybody understands it differently from the actual sort of work they're doing. But if we have everybody involved, then eventually we can get to sort of a defined goal that we're trying to achieve. Okay, next slide, Claire. So our mission is very simple. It is effectively, it's about aligning and readying the water industry with digital skill sets to assist and support resources and succession planning in AMP7. But that won't be just for AMP7, that will be AMP8, AMP9 and beyond. You know, the idea behind this is, and where my background has always been involved in recruitment, I've seen over the last 20 years a definitive shift in the way engineering has been going, in the way projects are being delivered, and what is now sort of expected within sort of major projects. And one of the things that we're seeing at the moment is that there's not enough skill sets across all industry sectors at the moment. There's major infrastructure projects taking place everywhere at the moment, certainly within the UK. And one of the things that we have to realise is that certainly in the water sector, you know, digital engineering is growing very quickly. I've noticed a big shift over the last coming sort of years, and it's important that the transition is a successful one, because what we don't is the ideology to be there, that all the good work that's been done in the industry sector already, is making sure that we can sustain that for the future and make sure that we've got people coming from sort of young ages and understand exactly what the industry is doing, and making sure they've got a journey that will take them right through to when, you know, they decide to sort of fulfill their whole career. So that's basically where we are with that. Next slide, Claire. This is really important. I've not really put much information on this slide because I think it speaks for itself. But our core route for everything that we're doing is based around equality, diversity, and inclusion. We have in our group, we have a specific arm now which focuses purely on that side of things with equality, diversity and inclusion. And I know we've got Phil Barnaby who's going to be talking after myself around this subject, but to give the sort of message we're trying to get is that everything that we're doing is based around including everybody in what we're doing. It's about how do we attract the right minds, the right people, the right cultures, the right everything. It's about including absolutely everybody so that we have the best chance of actually achieving our goal, which is making digital engineering sustainable for the UK water sector. Just to give you a little bit of an insight, we had our skills group meeting probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago. It was absolutely fantastic. There were so many good ideas coming out about what we want to do, what we want to achieve, you know, how we want to get the message across companies from sort of top down, and just making sure that, you know, it's not just a policy, but it is actually something that's real, something that's going to change, and something that's going to be fundamental in what we want to do in skills. Okay, Claire. This is just a little bit of a touch on what we've done with obviously the roadmap. I mean, Jamie's obviously shown you the sort of the main one. It's probably very difficult to see those, but basically the main ones that we're involved with is we want to engage with academia, which we're already doing. And we want to engage with all sort of relevant stakeholders, and that's everybody. That's everybody right through from schools, through to colleges, through to universities, and into industry itself, as well as the people that want to do this, you know, and making people aware of what the industry holds and all the sort of wonderful technology that's part of this. The next step, obviously, for us, obviously going into 2022, 2023, is obviously engaging with pretty much organizations. You know, it's very important that we want to make sure that how do we attract people? How do we attract people to our sector? What do we do? Are we focusing purely on academia? Are we focusing on school leavers? Or is there a case as well that we need to upskill our existing people? So it's a case of actually looking internally at our organizations and seeing where we can actually build up those sort of skill sets with the people we've already got as well, and then they can pass that knowledge on to future generations. But we also want to get involved with people like sort of HR directors, HR managers, engineering directors, and sort of bring everybody together so that everyone's talking and understanding. But the main goal is an interesting one. I think everybody's heard of obviously the concept of STEM. But we want to try and open it up, and this is where inclusion comes into it. And we want to try and rebrand it slightly for us with the phrase STEAM. And the reason we've got an A in it is it's just an alternative. It's people from alternative backgrounds. You know, we want to see, you know, everybody's working on the S and the T and the E and the M, which is hugely important for our industry sector. But sometimes I think we probably miss out on people that come from alternative backgrounds or have studied alternative subjects, and actually what they understand and their mindset could bring something to the concept of BIM. So the plan around this is we'd like to at some point and get organizations bought in where we could provide some sort of round robin apprenticeship, or maybe like a graduate placement scheme, that you're not just particularly with one company, but you actually get an opportunity to maybe do short-term placements with lots of different companies. So you could do a period of time with a utility company and understand what they do. You could do time with a consultancy and understand what they do, and the same with contractors, subcontractors, and manufacturers. So it would give that person an all-rounded approach, so that when they do go into the industry sector, they understand the whole life cycle of project delivery and data analysis. So it's quite a ambitious idea, but it's something that our team are actually very interested in. So I think we'll just have to watch the space on that one, but I think it'll be a great concept, certainly for the learning of individuals. If you want to next screen, Claire. I've pretty much touched on most of this, but I'll leave that up there for people just to have a quick read. But again, it's just exactly what we're doing on the roadmap with regards to academia, key stakeholders, obviously the engagement with companies, and obviously the plan with STEAM. But from my sort of perspective, I think it will help exactly what the whole roadmap is all about with BIM4Water, and how it's going to support and sustain what we want to do. Okay, final slide, Claire. So this is just a little bit about academia and industry. Now, I've put some bullet points up there about obviously apprenticeships, like we discussed, building links with academia, which we're doing, promoting digital technology, data importance, clear career paths, and obviously utilising skills from alternative industry sectors. So they're just a few things that we're discussing, but there's probably a bit of I suppose, more of an important message within all this. It's about joining all the dots. It's about creating stepping stones for a clearer path. And if you think about it, you know, apprenticeships are a fantastic idea. I know companies are already doing it. I've seen people setting up digital apprenticeships, and people are learning sort of, you know, once they've left school or from college. And I think it's a fantastic way of getting young people into the industry. I think it's important with the academia side, because you'll hear from a few people that have recently left university and gone into industry, but it's about understanding still what the concepts are that they're teaching. It's understanding, you know, what's in the modules these days, because obviously we know that the traditional engineering methods are very important in what we do. They're the root of everything that we create. But is there a case now to say that, you know, there's got to be maybe a blend of traditional engineering techniques, and actually making a lot of students aware of what is out there, certainly with regards to BIM, and digital technology. I mean, we're living in an age now of you know, technology. We're living in an age of, there's lots of exciting things out there. You know, there's drones and cameras and imaging and things like that. So I think it's more of a case of giving students the awareness of what's out there. I think when we're talking about sort of digital skills, it's understanding what's needed to become a digital engineer, and I don't think there's one trait that fits all. I think basically you need experience from all walks of life. You need experience from maybe different types of sort of degrees, maybe sort of from experiences, things like that. So I think from that point of view, it's important that we sort of focus on everybody and include everybody. And it's promoting a clear career path. I think one of the things that we're finding is that there isn't necessarily a clear career path for people that want to focus on whether it's 3D modeling, whether they want to go into maybe 4D rehearsal, or whether they want to do something, you know, within that remit. And it's making people aware that there is a clear career path, that they can actually study towards that, in that they can go from sort of school, they can go to college, they can go to university, or they can go straight into industry. But there's also that opportunity that companies understand that there is a need for creating that clear career path of someone who wants to focus on that route. Because what you may get is people that go either into a design engineering function, or they may go into cost, or they may go into site, or they may go into construction. But it's actually about making sure that there is something where people are completely aware that there is a path for somebody that wants to progress through those stages. And more importantly, it's also utilizing skills from other industry sectors, because as we know, there are other industries like civil structural, there's architecture, there's different people that have actually done this sort of work already. And I'm pretty sure that, you know, we know they can apply those sort of principles and understand the principles of BIM to actually support what we want to achieve. So hopefully that gives you sort of all a bit of an idea of what we're trying to do. It's still very much in its early stages, but I do think with the people that we've got, the ideas that we're coming up with, and obviously the concerns I guess we have as well, I think we're in a good shape to actually sort of support what BIM4Water's mission is. So that's everything from me.
Thank you, Simon.
Well, no worries. So we've got a little bit of time, but we'll keep going. But we've got Phil Barnaby. So Phil's part of the skills group, and he's from SGB Water Engineering, and he's going to talk about making inclusion inclusive. So I'd like to pass over to Phil with his talk. So thank you very much.
Hello, my name's Phil Barnaby. I'm really, really happy and proud to be here today. I've worked with Simon and Jamie over the past year or so, and the transformation that I've seen take place not only within the digital realm, but across the EDI platform has just been really sort of an empowering moment for all of us, I think. There's lots of things that I'm going to go through today regarding EDI, understanding how inclusivity plays a real pivotal role in obtaining, retaining staff of the protected characteristics. So how do our companies really view equality, diversity and inclusion? Was it something that we actually thought about from the outset of our when we set up our organizations, or was this something that has just been an ongoing process as we've moved forward? And the highlight of for instance, some of the events that's been in on the media within the past few years has really sort of made all of us look up and realize that, you know, there are a few things that are not quite right in the world. And what we really need to do is really start talking and taking grips of these things to really start getting a handle and a control on what direction do we actually want these to move in, because we can play a part in making sure that some of these issues or some of the potential issues don't have to really be issues. We can really have open discussions and courageous conversations that can change this. So getting wise to diversity and inclusion and in every organization is really, really, really important. And what I love about what BIM4Water has done, they've joined in with initiatives across the sector to really drive this transformational change. As I said, not just in the digital realm, but they have the realization of the resource risk that is actually in play at the moment and how that can be tackled. And through diversity and inclusion, and this was actually mentioned in the 2007 EV Summit, that resources and inequality are really, they go in hand as a risk factor to why we will not be able to provide resilience if we don't make changes now. So one of the ways we could do this as an organization is really start thinking about how how we take on our recruitment process. What is our recruitment process at the moment? Is it inclusive? Does it offer all of the opportunities and training and development for all, or is it just an exclusive area that obtains those benefits? So, can we move into the next slide, please? Right, so EDI. What does EDI mean, really? And how's it really going to work effectively to ensure that fairness across your organization is actually happening? Is this an action that's taking place? So for me, you can't have one without the other. D and I are often mentioned within the same sentence because you can't have one without the other. Now, just doing my own research across the industry, I've seen that there are a few pockets of diversity within the sector. And this is the same for construction, is for utilities. And what I've noticed is that diversity is quite there, and a lot of companies are taking that on board in terms of diversity. But diversity really is only part of equality. Without that inclusion, and the inclusion is the part that really I see there can be improvements made on inclusion. And I have experiences of this myself. I went to university. I've been in the water industry for 18 years. I said I went back to university in 2009 because I felt like I wasn't being included in some of the training elements that I thought could escalate and enhance my career. So I went back to university because I thought I wasn't going to get it within the water industry. I went back to university and done it myself and came back out. And I was really elated with everything that I learned. I learned a lot more than just water utilities. I learned about construction, project management, all sorts of different things. And I came back raring to go. And as I jumped back into the industry, it was exactly the same thing. There was no place for inclusion for me. My face didn't fit. So therefore, I wasn't going to get anywhere. And it really sort of left me feeling really deflated, not wanting to be in the industry anymore. And I think this is the key thing in us providing the right cultures and action plans within our organizations. And I'm going to go back to retaining your staff and making sure that everybody who comes in doesn't feel left out. They feel like they can obtain the same opportunities as everyone else in there, in the organizations. So how does your company achieve this? How do we achieve this? Can I move on to the next slide? So I'm just going to take an example of Black History Month, just as we've just finished Black History Month. And I don't know what your organizations did, but there are many organizations that see any one of the protected characteristics as a tick box exercise. And there are some that may have done this, you may not have done this. And I'm hoping that the pie chart to the right is what most of your organizations are deeming as a real action plan. Because more often than not, what you get is the pie chart on the left. What you do is you'll get maybe one event that is associated to any particular protected characteristics event or purpose within that part of the year. And for instance, Black History Month, there are companies that had one event, they threw a few diverse pictures up on a leaflet, and that was it. And that will be it for the rest of the year. There will be no sort of action plan that takes place. So no change of policy, no action-related incentives to educate and train in unconscious bias, or things that actually directly affect decision-making going forward. You know, are there developments for diverse work groups? And another most important, I would say, is probably developing that alliedship. Understanding that there is a support need to drive this transformation as well. And it doesn't just come from the people who it directly affects. it involves all of us. Now, the resource resilience, the challenges are for all of us. So in the same way, it affects all of us, is the same way that all of us really need to action our development and our drive towards making these changes. When water runs out, it runs out for all of us. When the air gets polluted, it pollutes for all of us. So there's no discrimination in what it's going to do in terms of its impact. So we all need to work on this. We all need to work on it together. And we want to set some long-term ambitions in your organizations. Organizations must make sure that they have a comprehensive effort to continue investing and attracting, developing, hiring and retaining diverse workforce while building that inclusive culture. So there's two elements there. You've got that inclusive culture, and that is probably one of the hardest things to change within the water sector, because we've lived with this status quo for so many decades. I think we have a young revolution that's coming up at the moment that are not, they're not from the old status quo. Most of them are of my children's age now. I've spoken to Simon and Jamie, as I said before, in relation to many different areas of situations that affected me personally. And the fact that we can actually have these open conversations now, and have been able to do so from our generation, only means that it's going to improve for the next generation. So I think the younger people that are actually coming into the industry now are going to be the real changers here. They're going to be the real drivers that are going to change this, the whole spectrum on EDI. Their whole outlook is very different. So, and I'm really excited about what I see coming ahead. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So just a little bit about the data. We're, as Simon Jamie says, we've formed a consortium of organizations that have come together, really not just to identify what the needs and the challenges are for our water resources, our CO2 reduction, but really just to really have a look at how we can reach out to some of the disadvantaged groups. What sort of actions plans can we implement to drive forward the development of the skills gap? How we embrace that, and how do we embed EDI into everything we do with that? And the data that's shown here has actually improved in the last 3 years in some areas. Especially if you look at the disabilities is actually way above its target at the moment. Yeah, sorry, the blue sections and all the blue right in our industry standard, the orange sections are what the sector's levels are at the moment. And this might be a bit small to see, so hopefully we can send these slides out so you can get a true picture of how it is at the moment within the sector. So disabilities has gone up. The under 24s there's been a real impact in that, and that is moving in the right direction. So trajectory is actually on moving in the right direction. We've had increases in international workers and European workers. Obviously, we know Brexit had a massive impact on that, but the digital realm has changed that. Because now we don't have to go through all the immigration to have somebody working for us, or with us, or consulting for us. In actual fact, that can be done from the comfort of their own home in another country, and still give us the benefits that we need. So this digital transformation, what it actually does, it opens up inclusivity. It opens up the potential of inclusivity, and this is really powerful with what we're trying to achieve with the BIM4Water Skills Group. Yeah, can we move into the next slide? Now, I think that the biggest thing for all of us is, and this usually starts with our senior leadership, or middle management or hiring management. And really, I just wanted to touch on a few of these today. And then this is our bias. I think we need to recognize what unconscious bias is, and the fact that we're never, ever going to cure our unconscious bias. Our unconscious bias is built up out of our learned behavior. Maybe some things that our parents have taught us, or we've just seen from our parents, our environment, our background, our perception of individuals and groups, and our perspective. And our perspective is actually what is the thing that is the decision maker. And if we actually just take things from our own perspective, we may be making the wrong decisions. We may be losing really good candidates that can actually bring that diversity of thought, that can make the massive changes, as Simon said earlier, can make the massive changes that will have the most impacts on our challenges within the sector. And this is just because they have a different way of thinking. As I said, we don't want to stay in the same status quo. We need to drive change. Change is what's needed, and it's government-led. It's led by our regulators, and like I said, not just in resilience to all of our assets, water resources. This bias is really crippling our organizations, and I think really for me personally is part of the biggest passion. Educate yourself on what bias is. Educate yourself on what bias lives within you. When you look in the mirror each day, understand what decisions you're actually going to make that may affect people in a positive or negative way. Is that fair for you to do? Are you acting from a fair and open place that doesn't take on your own biases and then implements those decisions that could effectively, cripple your own organizations? Because there are a lot of organizations now that view EDI as a competitive edge, as their competitive advantage. So if you understand any of the biases, and that's racial bias, affinity bias or gender bias, let me just touch up on a few points there. Racial bias usually starts from the screening process of a recruitment process. If you see maybe a name that doesn't sound English enough, or you can't pronounce quite correct, or it looks like it comes from another country, that CV may not even get through to the next stage. That's a bias in itself. Yeah, the affinity bias is one where, and the two peas in a pod really reiterate this. We want to attract and obtain somebody that looks like us, or does things the same way we do. And by doing that, we stick to the status quo. And in this day and age, 2021, we need to start thinking a little bit more diversely. And that's where it comes from. It's the thought process. It's diverse thinking that makes the change. It starts first and then the action comes after. And gender bias is another one. And the reason why I brought these ones up today is because if we look at the data, or if we go have a chance to look at the data again, you'll see that these are where the areas where the largest disparities take place. And there are initiatives taking place. I've done some work with the Mayor of London this year in regards to developing young black males into the water industry. I've also done some work with, or I am doing some work with Northumbrian Water in regards to an EDI accelerator, and how we go into communities, how we engage with community leaders who are at the forefront, or at the front line of these disadvantaged areas. What can we learn? How can you educate us to do the right things, to make changes to our cultures, so that when we do take on the diverse ready workforce, we can retain them, we can keep them. But a lot of it, like I said, it starts with us. It starts with us looking in the mirror. It starts with us educating ourselves about what diversity and inclusion is. And it also really boils down to listening to others' experiences and trying to understand others' experiences. And I'll give you a prime example of that as well. Can we move on to the next slide? just before I go through this slide, a prime example of how you could really, and this goes back to data as well. Data is something that many of us, and we've tried to obtain data in the past, say, month or so, year or so, to really see where most of the organizations are at the moment and trying to put in some ambitions to see where we can get within the next 5 years. And more often than not, most of the companies haven't got the data. This hasn't been something that has been implemented from the start of the organization. So data is very scarce and it's pretty much all over the place. There's not one central sort of digital storage that actually, or software, a little bit of software that actually can display all of the data that we need to see. And most of the time when you ask for data, there's a trust element with data, especially like myself as an ethnic individual. More often than not, when I think about giving data, I'm asking myself the question, why do you want my data? What are you going to do with my data? Is it actually going to benefit me to give you my data, or is it going to hinder me? So there's lots of thought processes that go on with data. Now, there are ways that you can actually find out in your organization without prompting just the normal data. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying continue to do that. But for instance, there's questions like, how many languages are spoken within your organization? And out of that strikes up a conversation. And you're more than likely going to understand the different languages that are in your organization means that you've got a diverse group within your organization. It also gives you some ideas of how you can use that information to then start creating activities that are inclusive for those people that have that speak different languages. English may not be their first language. And also, speaking a different language doesn't necessarily mean you're indigenous to that country. And what that shows me about allyship is that if you are willing to learn about a different language, you're willing to learn about a different culture. You're willing to educate yourself about something that's not just about you. And so there are many different ways that you can think outside of the box to obtain equality, diversity, and inclusion. But the key thing is E equals D times I. You've got to have both. You've got to have diversity, and you've definitely got to have that inclusion. And why wouldn't you want to have that when you look at the statistics here? 21% of gender executive teams are more likely to have 21% of outperforming profitability, and 27% more likely to have superior value creation. And the same can be said for ethnic groups with leadership. 33% more likely to have profitability in your organization. So why wouldn't we want to embrace EDI? Why wouldn't we want to develop that? Like we develop health and safety, like we develop action plans for asset rehabilitation. You know, without the people to deliver these activities, those activities are always going to struggle. And we're already in a position where we've got a large skills gap. We're already in a position that we need to do something about changing that. And an EDI could be the solution towards that. And it's being held, like I said, by our regulators, stakeholders, organizations like BIM4Water, the water. In fact, I work with Black professionals in construction industry, and there's the same transformation taking place across that sector as well. So this is happening everywhere. And what I want to do, can I move to the next slide? What I'm asking today, and if you're going to take away anything from what I've said today, and I hope it's made a lot of sense to you today, you know, I've rambled on a bit, but we're not calling you out. We're actually calling you in. I've had to learn a lot about my own biases, things that I've never thought about, disability, LGBT, and neurodiversity. These things I never knew about last year, or even wanted to even educate myself about them. But in looking at my own passions and wanting to deliver fairness to others, I've had to educate myself in regards to other people's passions. I've had to be open. I've had to listen. I've had to have courageous conversations to learn about what needs to be done and how we can drive that forward. You can't change things for people without involving the people. There's key message in that. So if you're going to take anything away from me today, I'm calling you in. I'm calling you in to help us make the changes that are needed to drive the challenges that we've got ahead going forward as a global mission. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. That was absolutely brilliant. I really appreciate you taking the time to do all of that. That was a really, really good presentation, and I hope sort of that message gets across to everybody, because that's going to be sort of, as I say, the fundamental thing about what we're trying to achieve within the skills group. So no, thank you very much, Phil. That was absolutely brilliant.